if you have an idea, you want to do something, just get into action, because you learn a lot more that way rather than by trying to learn about it in the back end and then trying to put it into practice, if that makes sense.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Next Move podcast. And if this is your first time on the show, we are a podcast that share the stories of impact and change in India. And today I'm so excited to have Saras Ramamoorthy with me, who is a co-founder at Learning Matters. And what I really love about Learning Matters is they're flipping the switch on traditional EdTech. When you think about traditional EdTech, it's direct to student to improve their learning outcomes, which is awesome, which is definitely has its place, and it's doing incredible things. But what Learning Matters are doing is equipping our teachers to be better teachers, and especially in India and in rural India, that plays such a huge role. And we're going to get into the psychology of it all. We're going to get into all the aspects. So I'm so excited to have you on, Saras. How are you?
I'm great, thank you, Arman, and it is a pleasure to be here on the podcast with you. Education has always been at the forefront of any society. It's the most basic thing that everyone in a society needs in order for the society and the country as a whole to move forward and make progress at the same time, right? So education is very dear to the hearts of the entire team at Learning Matters, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to tell the story of Learning Matters and our passion for EdTech and for teachers on your show. Appreciate it.
I'm so happy to have you on, and our coincidental meeting leads me into our first question. So we went to the same university, different times, but we went to the same university, and you went there to study special education. Could you talk about why you went to Purdue? What was the reason you went there? What did you study? And did you always have a passion for education from even before you went there?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. And so I was one of those students in high school. I did my high school in a very reputed school in Chennai. And it's a school that's known for all of the students that go forward to become engineers and doctors. And I think I was the only student in my entire batch that did not write a single professional entrance exam for either of the two professions, because I was always very clear that that's not what I wanted to do. I had always enjoyed interacting with children, just the conversations and getting them to think, getting them to answer. So I decided to do a bachelor's in nutrition and dietetics, which was a fairly new subject at that point of time. I'm talking about 1995, 96. It was a fairly new subject. A lot of people hadn't heard about a course like that, a bachelor's in that. But I wanted to do it because the range of subjects in it was so broad and so interesting. There was biochemistry, there was microbiology, and there was child development for 1 year. And that was what really interested me. And when I actually studied and did child development, I realized that this was the field I wanted to get into. And so I went ahead and pursued that. And I decided to go to Purdue for a master's in child development. Not a lot of people go to Purdue for anything other than engineering or MBA. You yourself went for an MBA. So yes, it was fairly new. But what I loved about the degree that I was going to do at Purdue was, along with actually doing your theoretical coursework in the university, you also, as a grad student in the Department of Child Development and Family Studies, every student also has to do a certain number of hours each week where they are in the classroom with children. So it's more like a practical side to what you're studying and learning about. And I was a graduate teaching assistant at their child development lab school for a long time, for 2 years. So I was working in the classroom with children, and I realized that was where I truly, my passions and my truly came out. Like I realized that there was no end to what I could do with children, and just seeing how, as a teacher, how you are directly impacting what a child can understand about the world around them, how the child can process that information. And it's almost unsettling to see the power that you can have, the impact that you can have on children as a teacher, right? I mean, we all know, my children come home, and when I say, that's not right, this is right, they say, no, ma'am said it was this, so it has to be whatever ma'am says, right? Like, teacher's word is gospel. So it was incredible for me to see the impact that I could have and the other teachers could have on the way children learn, and how that sets the foundation for pretty much everything a child can go forward to do, right? So I knew that this was the field I wanted to be in. I finished my master's, followed it up with another master's in special education. So the interest in working with children was there from my teenage years. I followed that interest by actually studying the subject and doing a lot of classroom experiences. I then, after finishing both my masters, I worked for many years at Purdue as the head teacher of the Child Development Lab School there. So I spent many years in the classroom, and they were some of the best years of my career.
Wow. And, I love what you said there about the impact of a teacher, because it's so true. I think everybody can think back to a few of their best teachers that had a huge impact of them, but also their worst teachers, like that had incredibly negative impact of what they said. And, it can stick with you.
It does. I mean, if you were to ask me now, I probably wouldn't share it on a public forum, but I can tell you exactly which were the worst teachers for me, and exactly what they said. Even now, 25, 30 years later, I can remember exactly what they said that, made me hate the entire subject, perhaps. I mean, it's crazy the impact that teachers can have on children, to the extent that they can influence their career decisions, right? I mean, why does a child hate math or hate chemistry or hate physics or anything like that? There's probably a reason behind it somewhere, right? So teachers are the single most powerful influence on children, other than their parents. Yeah,
I agree. I can remember some things teachers said, and I'm just like, when I look back, I'm like, how could you say that to a kid?
Yes, exactly.
Honestly.
And because it's very, the way children, teachers help mold how the child perceives and understands the world around them, right? So literally, what I would tell all of the graduate students who later went on to train under me to become teachers, right? I would always tell them that anytime you're going to open your mouth and say something to a child, just think for a second about what you're saying. And sometimes it's not even about what you say, it's also your actions. There's a lot that they take away from the way you behave, and it's not just your words, but it's everything you do, your facial expressions, the way you react to something, the way you hold them or the way you touch them. Everything makes a difference. And that's why, we at Learning Matters firmly believe that for any kind of scalable, sustainable, positive impact in education, whatever solutions you have, they have to include the teacher in them.
I agree. And that's what's really cool.
Yep.
So you said, like you said, you stayed on at Purdue, and you stayed on in the US for quite a while teaching. And then you had this urge, and you wanted to come home to India. And, we talked before this, you couldn't explain it, but what was it like? Why did you want to come home? And this is becoming a great trend that I see in India. People are coming back from the US. So could you talk about that? Why did you choose to come home?
Sure. Yeah, I'm very happy to talk about that. I was there for a long time, 13 years, and almost entirely had worked within the field of education, either in the classroom or out of the classroom, but still very firmly within education, developing curriculum for programs across the United States. But I think, the answer is in the question you asked me. You said, why did you come back home? And I'll say to you, because this is home, right? So after a point, you just realize there's something missing, and it's indescribable. You can't quite put your finger on it, but you just know something is missing. And for me and for the rest of my family as well, we just felt like India was where we had to be. And the minute we came back, it was like we were home.
That's awesome. And so when you came home, your to-be co-founder got you a job at the company you eventually started working for, Pearson, which is also an education company.
Yes,
so could you talk about that experience and the experience of meeting your co-founders at the company?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a great story that I never get tired of telling. So my co-founders are Gauri Mahesh and Ramamurthy, and the three of us aren't related in any way except by the very strong ethos that we have for education and the passion that we have for education. So I joined Pearson. Both my co-founders were there working, and Gauri is also my high school classmate. So we've known each other donkey's years, a very long time. And I joined Pearson. They had the right opening for someone with my background. And it was in education. It was great. It was a great experience because I got to see the digital content and the digital education side of things, and especially from an Indian perspective, because mind you, I hadn't worked in education in India up until then, right? So Pearson was great for that matter, and I got to learn so much in my almost 2 years there. But then there was a point where the three of us felt, and as we got to know, that we had such a strong ethos for education, and very specifically, all three of us, unequivocally attribute everything in our lives to education, and we firmly believe that if a child can get the best of education, or at least access to education, let's say access to education, then it really opens up all kinds of doors for you, right? So and we wanted to do something for all of those in the country that had the aspiration to be like that and do that, but just didn't have access to education. And that kind of encouraged us to get together and found Learning Matters. It's been 4.5 years now, and we are going very strong. And that ethos and that passion hasn't changed a bit. In fact, we have a fantastic team that where everyone shares that very same ethos. I mean, they're here because they believe in education and they believe in giving back. And I think that's crucial. You have to feel that.
So how did the idea come up for Learning Matters? And then talk about, this is something that plays on the mind of so many to-be founders.
Yeah.
You have this idea, you have co-founders, you're excited, but you also have a family and you also have kids, and you also, there's that security of a full-time job. So can you talk about that leap as well? That's a hugely important role that, people would love to take away.
Sure. Yeah, that leap is an incredibly hard one to make. And, everyone says this, all entrepreneurs talk about this at some point, and they always tell everyone that, whatever you see and you hear about, you always only hear about the success stories, and it always looks so cool and so glamorous, but then you always only hear about the success stories. You don't hear about that's the tip of the iceberg. So we don't see the rest of the startups, the rest of the entrepreneurs who tried equally hard and didn't make it for some reason, right? So leaving behind the security of a full-time job, especially a job at a really good organization, something that pays you well, and in a field that you like, it's incredibly hard to make. For the three of us, we had a lot of discussions before we officially decided to start Learning Matters. We made sure that we had a lot of discussions about, and we were very, very honest with each other. We were very, and that's one thing that helps. And I will always tell people who are aspiring entrepreneurs, there are two things that I think are very critical. One is find, if you're intending to find a co-founder or more than one co-founder, please make sure that your co-founder is someone that you are by principle and by values, that you are very tightly aligned with them. Because if you have that, nothing else really matters, and nothing else can come in between, right? If you're already tied on what you believe in and the core values, right? Whatever those values may be, if you're very tightly aligned, you're good. And so make sure you take the time to find a co-founder like that, because if you have a co-founder like that who truly understands you and is there to back you up no matter what, everything else becomes so much more easier. The second thing is, have all of the difficult and hard conversations upfront, right? whatever that conversation is. There is no point in saying, but this is my good friend, and how can I talk money with my friend, or how can I talk like, what percentage should we each hold in the company? And that's the whole point. You have that conversation because that person is a good friend, or you believe is a good friend. It only helps you, because later, as the company grows, as you have other difficult decisions to make, if you haven't had those difficult conversations in the beginning with complete honesty and being genuine, the rest of it will just not work out. So the three of us had a lot of conversations, a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of, brain searching and soul searching to ensure that this is really what each of us wanted to do individually. That was one point. And then also make sure that each of us, that we three wanted to do this, start a company with the other two. Like, that's another point we had to be completely sure about. We also brought our families in. We also brought all the spouses in to make sure that they understood and they were aligned with us. And they, because without that, without the family support, it's not easy. And they have to be okay with it as well. So we had many conversations before we decided, yes, this is what we want to do. And from then on, it was more about planning what we were going to do and getting into the execution and the implementation.
Wow. So you guys took that leap. And what I'm taking from that is find the right co-founder, make sure you have the hard conversations up front, and get all your spouses in the loop, get everyone involved to make sure that you're moving forward.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about, before we get into really learning matters, I want to talk about, can you paint a picture of what education looks like in rural India right now? What is the situation with the teachers? How are the students learning, especially in public schooling? Could you go into that?
Sure. Yeah. So the biggest problem in education right now, across the world and across rural and urban areas, is a severe shortage of qualified, trained teachers. Because teachers, teaching is a notoriously low-paying profession in most countries except your Finland and Norway and countries like that, like those. But there is a huge shortage of qualified trained teachers. They might have a B.Ed or something on paper, but for practical purposes, that teacher really does not know anything about classroom management or curriculum development or lesson plans or even managing children. So if you have to be a teacher of older children, then you have to know something about the development of a child at that age, right? What is appropriate, what's not appropriate, what's relevant, what's not relevant. Same thing, whatever age of children you teach, you have to know how to be a good teacher for that age. So most of our teachers don't have that. And that is a huge, we like to say it's just a huge time bomb waiting to happen, right? I mean, if your teachers are not going to be trained, then imagine the kind of students that are going to come out that are going to become the workforce of our country, right? So in rural India, the schools, they have a huge, the problem is even more magnified there, right? So they have even less of those trained, qualified, experienced teachers who are there for the passion of teaching, right? You tend to have a lot of teachers who are there because, it's an easy job. They can do their cooking at home in the morning and then come and teach in the school and get back home. So it's not something that they would have chosen for themselves. They just do it because it's convenient, right? While there are many students there who, they are no less than the urban children in terms of their abilities or their aspirations, but without the right teachers to guide them and to teach them, it's even harder. And they obviously have, the obvious challenge that we all know about is that they tend to have a lot less access to resources and high quality resources that our urban children have. I mean, we are spoiled for choice, right? Schools here typically are spoiled for, there are n number of vendors that bring all kinds of products and solutions to them. Not so for the rural schools. Nobody's going out there saying, hey, I have a digital content platform, or hey, I have these activity kits and I have this and I have that. So for them, it's twofold. It's access to any high quality resources, And of course, it's not having the qualified trained teachers. So that magnifies the whole issue for them.
You know what I like to think is like, we have 1 billion people, and a lot of those kids are not in urban areas, like you're saying.
They're not,
And
yeah.
what if we're leaving behind like an Elon Musk, or
Yeah.
someone who's gonna just absolutely change the world, not even just our country.
Exactly. Yeah.
My thought there is that it's incredible that edtech companies in general are able to leverage technology to get education to them at scale and for cheap, because it needs to be affordable.
Exactly. It needs to be
And
affordable and it needs to be
Mhm.
accessible. So
Mhm.
affordability is next. First is let's give them access to it, and then let's make
Mhm.
sure that it's affordable so they can actually use it and make a difference.
Yeah, exactly. And so I want to get into, like I said earlier, you guys flipped the switch on edtech. You guys are focusing on, like we've talked about a lot just before this, empowering the teacher. Could you go into a little bit about why you guys chose that approach and how you were doing that?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. So, like I said, like I said earlier, if there has to be any kind of sustainable and scalable, scalable and sustainable, these are the two keywords, right? Impact in education, and you want to make sure that it's, so when you make solutions that directly go to students and are purchased by parents or by families to be used by the children at home, think about it. Who are you impacting? You're impacting that one child or that many children who undoubtedly are benefiting from the solution and go on, with the power of that benefit, right? But when you are able to upskill the teacher, you're able to transform the teacher. What you're doing is you're transforming the entire teaching learning cycle in the classroom, in that school, and that single teacher now impacts generations of students. Now that impact is going to be a longer, wider, and a deeper impact. So we were very firm right from day one that our solutions will make sure that the teacher is at the center of whatever we do, because that's the only way that we can ensure the scalability and the sustainability. So we focus a lot on teacher training, and we provide high quality customized teacher training programs for teachers in different ways. So pre-COVID, our one of our flagship solutions was Star Teacher, which is a teacher training program. And it was a blended model where our training team would go out to the school 3 times a year, no matter where the location. I mean, our team here, I mean, we are so incredibly lucky and blessed to have them. They will take any means of transportation that it necessitates to get to a school. Like they've had trains canceled on them, and they've, like, in the middle of the night, switched trains at stations from one train to another. And we take like buses with wooden seats. There's a school in Maharashtra that we work with. It's kind of towards the coast, like I think an hour or 2 hours from Mumbai. And you have to do the train, of course, or the train to Mumbai, and then you take the local train from Mumbai to another place, and then you do the last leg in this little rickety van bus. So we do whatever it takes to get to the school. And that was a blended model that was pre-COVID and pre the world changing. Now we do a lot of upskilling programs and professional development programs for teachers online. We do a lot of webinars. We have a webinar almost every week, and while most of them are paid at very nominal prices, all of the topics are very relevant, very timely for teachers. Like things like, how can you be setting up your online classroom? How do you assess an online classrooms? How do you manage the students in higher grade students who are tech savvier than yourself? I mean, these are all issues that teachers are grappling with right now. So we ensure that our webinars focus on these. We have a lot of free webinars as well. There's no payment. It's just our contribution to the teaching community at this time. So we ensure that no matter what we do, the teachers are they're at the fulcrum of the solution.
It's like it's a different way of looking at customer obsession, because in this way, the teacher is your customer. And it's incredible that you guys are going through all those means just to make sure that they are in a teaching and in a learning environment that suits them. So
Yes.
that's really cool. And so you have this idea, and you have this program in place. You guys have the experience to put this program in place, but we're talking about rural cities and underfunded schools that you guys are going after. And I know you guys are a for-profit business. So how are you selling to them? How is it, how is it going through? Could you talk about that sale?
Yeah. Um, yes. So there are two kinds of ways in which the schools react, the rural schools. One is you have those that are so happy that someone's out there with a solution that's affordable for them, and what they'll do is whoever is the decision maker, it could be the principal, the correspondent, the school owner, they will make sure that they divert whatever funds are needed to do that. I mean, and you would think that rural schools would say, oh, we don't have the funds, right? They are the first to, if they know the value that this will bring to their school, and if they know the value that it will bring to their teachers and their students, the decision maker will make sure they put the funds together. So a lot of times they will either divert funds from something else towards this, or they will ensure that they plan it well in advance of the next academic year, so that they can ensure that the cost is kind of split among the students for the next academic year. So they'll plan the fee structure that way, right? And all of our solutions are so affordable that the change for the parents who pay the fees is really not that great, not that big. So they will do that. On occasion, we've had schools that have been really interested, but then they just really don't have the funds. And we try to help them. We try to connect them with CSR or organizations that are looking to fund. We have done that a couple of times, but usually we've seen that if they believe in the value of the solution, they will do what they need to make sure they get it for their school.
Yeah, that's so true. I for our CSR activities at our company, we actually go to this little village school that's down the road from us, and you can see in the
Okay.
teachers' eyes that they want to do everything for those kids, but they just don't have the resources. And
Right.
when you
And
equip them, they
yeah,
they really, they go forward with it. So I completely get what you're saying.
exactly. And a lot of times we've all heard of the phrase, you don't know what you don't know, right? But it is so true for teachers, and especially those
Hmm.
out there. It's not like they don't have the abilities or the intelligence or the desire to do something. There are a few that are there just because it's a
Hmm.
convenient
Yeah.
convenient job, but most of them are not like that. They truly want to do something to improve, to help, to support the students. So when you tell them simple things like strategies that they can use to manage their class better or manage their routines better, you can see the light bulbs going off in their heads, and they're like, I wish someone had told me this, 5 years back. I would have been doing it all these years. And they're so thankful, so filled with gratitude that someone is giving them these solutions, right? Or someone is teaching them how to navigate these issues that they have. They are just so thankful for it. You're absolutely right when you said that.
Yeah, it's crazy how these little teachings, I mean, they play big impact, but
Yeah.
they can have a direct fundamental impact on this disparity of the entire country, because all of
Yes.
these students are not getting the education that they need, and they could be, the brilliant ones of the future. So I think,
Exactly.
what you guys are doing is incredible. And I want to talk about, you guys are a technology company. You guys do a lot with technology,
Yes.
specifically with Alexa, and you guys are
Yes.
equipping Alexa to be able to
Yes.
teach and help augment teachers. And could you talk about how you guys are using Alexa and why you're using Alexa?
Of course, yeah. Yeah, we are super thrilled. We're doing a lot with AI and voice technology, and we believe that's the way to go forward. So, if you think about it, how do we all even learn language, right? We learn it because we listen to it being spoken by those around us, and we learn to speak it by saying things over and over again and practicing until we learn to say something. And so listening and speaking are the two most natural ways by which human beings learn and communicate, right? So our solution called Tara is an AI-enabled teaching assistant. It uses natural language processing, and the beauty of Tara is that it is a teacher that is a non-judgmental teacher, and a teacher that can teach with no fatigue, right? So the point is, if you can enable um, a device to become a teacher and to teach students and adults anything. It could be communicative English, it could be science, anything. Then think about how you're equipping them, because they can access the content on their own just with the device. They can repeat as many times as they need to. They can answer questions, and the way we're using Amazon's Alexa and the Echo Dot device for now. That's the platform that we're using now. But Tara can work on pretty much any voice enabled platform, right? So the point is that the learner could be a child, it could be an adult. The learner says something in response to questions, or and Tara listens, and then Tara will correct you, and Tara will not only tell you you're incorrect, but Tara will also tell you why. Tara will correct you and explain to you where you went wrong and correct you. So and what's even more, the learner is learning in a by using the two things that he or she is already equipped with, right? I listen to the teacher Tara, and I speak, and my teacher Tara listens to me and corrects me. So it's the most natural way of learning, and we're sticking with that. But also, because this is a machine teacher, there's no it's a judgment free environment, right? So there's no judgment, there's no fear of, if I say something wrong, what will happen, and what will the teacher say to me. Tara will just say, no, that wasn't right, and let me help you understand why, and direct them again. And finally, Tara can repeat parts of a lesson or a lesson any number of times. Now, a teacher with no fatigue is an amazing thing to have. So yes, we believe AI and voice is the way to go, and our Tara does just that.
When I'm bored, I randomly take my phone and I'll just put like the Siri on and start talking to it.
Yeah.
And when I think about if I was a kid and I would just play with this all the time. And like you were saying, it's just repetition.
Yeah.
You keep speaking, you keep practicing it. One day you're going to keep, learning more and more and more.
Exactly. And if you think about communicative English, because we do a lot in the domain of communicative English for teachers and students in the rural schools, rural and semi urban schools, because think about it, all of us grew up having access to listening to good English and speaking, and therefore we learned how to speak good English. But for them, that's not the case, right? I mean, even though the school is supposed to be an English medium school, it's even the English teacher will not speak good English, and that's because and how can you blame them? Because there is no access for them. How do I learn a language when I don't get to hear that language being spoken, and I don't have someone to practice conversing with? So and English is fortunately or unfortunately, it's the legacy left behind, right, by our history, and it's the language that these people need in order to most of them need in order to move forward in their career, or to break the cycle. I mean, high quality education and good English, right? They need that to break the cycle of whatever they've been doing all these years. We are giving them access to listening to good English, and to be able to practice speaking good English through Tara.
Can you expand on, because this is something I'm super interested about EdTech. Can you expand on how we can scale technology to kind of create a less unequal India, to reduce the disparity between tier 2, tier 3 cities and tier 1 cities in terms of outcomes? Can you go into that?
Absolutely. Arman, technology has to be the way to do that, right? I mean, there's no other way to do that. There's no other way to easily, quickly provide accessible and affordable, high quality education to tier 2 and tier 3, right? I mean, if you think about it, right, mobile phones are everywhere now, right? If only we can ensure that, and even Wi-Fi, internet, right, is gotten a lot better in tier 2 and tier 3. Most places, there's no problem with it now. But there are the occasional places here and there that don't. But if that can be taken care of, right, if let's say the government can step up their game and say, okay, let's ensure that, this is the time, there's COVID, we don't know the future of physical school. We're not sure how it's going to be. There is talk of reopening and all of that, but we don't know, and we don't know what form that will take. So if the internet infrastructure can be made better, there is no doubt that technology such as voice-based technology, which is so light on the devices that you have to use, you don't need a big you don't need a big set of stuff. The schools that are implementing Tara, all we give them is we give them the Eco Dot, and then they have the books that go along with it. I mean, it's that simple, right? And the Eco Dot is like this tiny. It's like a little saucer size, right? So imagine that's all you need, and that's all that school needs for its teachers and its students to learn. So technology has to be the way. And I think more importantly, what we're seeing is voice has to be the way. I mean, I just last week read a report by MSDF, Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, that very specifically the report focused on the importance of providing access to good spoken English, communicative English content, right, for India, right? So, and how can you do that? See, how can you ensure consistency in quality? Okay, consistency in the teacher quality, or the teaching quality. If you can mechanize part of it through a solution like Tara, and we absolutely believe that a teacher still has to be there in the equation, right? We're not replacing the teacher here at all. We are saying that we are equipping the teacher, we're enabling the teacher with this teaching assistant that now helps empower both the teacher and the teacher to empower the students, right? So it has to be done through technology. And yeah.
So COVID-19 has hit us, and it's hit education very hard in the sense that students aren't able to go to school. We're seeing a lot of cool advances in online education and all this kind of stuff. Can you talk about how you guys are dealing with COVID-19, and how are you pivoting to continue moving forward?
Yeah. So, and I, touched upon this a little bit earlier as well. One of the primary things we've done is to ensure that we don't stop rolling out programs for teachers, and rather than it being restricted just to the teachers that we are already working with, what I mean is the schools that we're already working with, we're opening these webinars up to just about everyone, and all the information of all of the upcoming topics and webinars is there on our website. So the critical thing is to provide access for teachers to programs that are supporting them and are showing them how to navigate all of this online teaching, right? Because all of a sudden, overnight, teachers were told, you're not going to school anymore. You now have to teach your students through this new medium. And guess what? It's so much more easier for the students to adapt to this than for the teachers to adapt to this, right? The teachers have a tougher time, right? The students because children are children. They're so flexible, right? They're so agile. They pick up things so quickly. It's tougher for the teachers who have to adapt everything, right? I'm not able to be in the physical space as my children to grab their attention. I have to think of a different way to do it now. I also have to monitor them. Who's listening? Who's not? Who's playing pranks, right? I mean, who's all of this stuff, but I can't be in the same space as them. So it's actually, the problem is magnified from their end, and they still have to do the planning. They have to figure out, how do I assess my students when I can't, there's no paper and pen. So now it's all moving to online assessments. Many teachers are a little bit technology savvy, but most of them are not, right? Most of them are not. They're old school. That's how they grew up. That's how they were taught, and that's how they've been teaching. So our focus is to make sure that whatever webinars or professional development programs we do, that it focuses on the stuff that matters for them, right? So things like how do you even set up an online classroom? And what kind of platforms can you use for that? I mean, do I need, is only Zoom okay, or do I need Zoom and an LMS, like a learning management system? The first time we had a webinar on this topic, you should have seen the kinds of questions we were getting from teachers all over the country, right? Everything from, I'm a pre-primary teacher, I teach like 4-year-olds. How am I going to even keep them engaged? How do I even get them to look at me through the screen? And how do I, because we all know that that is the big part of dealing with kindergarten and pre-primary children is their attention span is so short. When you have them in the physical space with you, it's easier to grab their attention. How do you do that when they're not there? So we were getting questions from that to, like, I teach older students, 11th and 12th. They know the platform much better than me. Like, they're able to take control of the whiteboard. They're able to take control of my screen. And how do I prevent them from doing? How do I prevent them from, like, how do I even know that they're there or not there? So these were real questions coming from real teachers who were just, in despair at how are we going to move forward. So we ensure that all of our webinars focus on topics that are of absolute relevance to the teacher in the here and now, right? Like, you're doing online classrooms. What do you need to know about it? What do you need to know about it to be successful? What else do you need to know about teaching at this time, right? What else does your school need to know? I mean, we run webinars not just for teachers, we run webinars for school leadership as well, right? School leadership have their own challenges as well, right? How do I manage parental expectations with online classrooms? Parents are paying fees, but there's no physical classroom. So how do I convey the significance of this to the parents, right? They have their own issues. So we're making sure. So we started these webinars during the lockdown, and the response has been overwhelming. With every week, we have more and more attendees. Earlier the attendees were more like from the south. Now we have a huge number that's coming in from the northeast, and we're thrilled by that. It obviously means that word of mouth is spreading. People are getting to know, and it just shows that teachers all across the country have the same issues.
That's awesome, man. It's so cool to see that several schools, like you're saying, they're finding ways to pivot, and they need this education though to figure out how to get through it.
Yes.
So I kind of want to go into a little bit of the conclusion of the podcast, and I want to talk about what's your mission with Learning Matters. What does it look like in 10 years?
For Learning Matters, definitely, move forward with a lot more technology. We're already doing a lot with voice, and we can only we definitely expect to do a lot more with AI and voice in our solutions. But also, I think the longer term, where we'd like to be in a few years from now, and maybe not even 10, maybe much sooner than that, is we'd ideally like to see centers of excellence for teachers set up by us all across the country. So like central points, institutions where teachers from the surrounding areas can come to be trained, to be supported, to receive all kinds of professional development programs and upskilling. So kind of spread that and pass on those skills to many, and be able to reach many more teachers. So that's definitely on our plans, is to set up these kinds of centers where we'll be able to impact 50, 100, 200, 500 times the teachers that we're able to do now. And definitely a lot more technology. Being able to use technology smartly is the key, and being able to use it to get high quality education to those that need it, right? That is the mission, and definitely that will not change.
Nice. And I just want to close on one thing. I was just thinking about it, and I wanted to ask you, what does it take to build something from scratch? From nothing into something great.
Okay. That's a whole 1 hour podcast by itself, Arman. You're just giving me 5 minutes for that. But okay, I will do my best to put into words the answer to that question. It takes a lot of courage. first and foremost. Um, it takes having really good partners in that, right? So, and this is the second time I'm speaking of, finding the right people to do it with. When you have the right co-founders, without Gauri and Murthy, none of this, this would not have been possible, right? It had to be the three of us together to be able to do this and bring our combined skills and passions and expertise, because we all three have a very different set of skills, and we're able to bring those three together and meld it into something so great. But it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of trust in your co-founders, and when your co-founders are truly people that have your back no matter what, you can do it, right? There's a lot of self-doubt when you're trying to build something from scratch. And I'll definitely say that for me, there's a lot of self-doubt, no matter how many years I've worked, right? No matter how much I've studied, there's always a doubt about, am I doing this right? I'm not sure if I'm doing this right, or I'm not sure I'm the right person to be doing this, or to be doing something so big and so impactful. That's always going to be there. Never give in to that. I think that's critical. You always have to get past that self-doubt. And another point, closely related point, is don't wait to know everything about something before you actually do something. Just, if you have an idea, you want to do something, just get into action, because you learn a lot more that way, rather than by trying to learn about it in the back end and then trying to put it into practice, if that makes sense. So I would say primarily it takes all of this. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of sacrifice, both from a financial point of view, of course, yes, but it also means from in other emotional ways as well, right? Because when you've given up a job and the money, or when you have children and you're trying to build something and you're an entrepreneur, then everybody knows that. Everybody knows how tough that is. But I'm definitely going to say this, and this is a plug for all women entrepreneurs whose challenges are completely unique, completely different. There's a lot that you sacrifice in order to be able to keep this going. So these are the things I would say anyone has to be ready for in order to be able to build something from scratch. And I'm not even sure I still did full justice to the question.
Wow, that was very, very powerful, and I think that's a great place to end up. Saras, thank you so much.
Heart, yeah.
Yes, and I tried to throw a little curveball at the end because it definitely came from the heart. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and I learned a lot from this podcast. So I'm looking forward to catching up soon.
Yes, thank you so much again, Arman. And I just want to say a huge shout out to everyone else at Learning Matters, the wonderful team. I'm blessed to be the voice and the face for them on this podcast. But be it my dear co-founders Gauri or Murthy, or the rest of the team, the leadership team at Learning Matters, every single person that works so hard to take our mission and fulfill that mission. This is a huge shout out to all of them for doing the incredible work that we're all doing. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share our story and to share, our plans for what we want to do. And I really hope that, our story inspires many. So thank you, Arman, for doing this.
Awesome. It was great to have you on. And thank you, everybody, for tuning into this episode. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We release new weekly podcasts on stories of impact and change in India. So thank you so much for listening. See you in the next one.